Have you ever seen those mind-boggling salaries of the world's top athletes and just wondered, how does that actually work? I mean, where does all that cash really come from? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and break it all down. Okay, let's start with the number. $275 million. Just let that sink in. That's what Cristiano Ronaldo pulled in over the last year, making him the highest paid athlete on the entire planet. It's a number so big it almost doesn't feel real. And right there, that's the big question, isn't it? That's what this is all about. You see a number that huge, and you think, wow, that's a lot of money for kicking a ball. But the truth? The truth is way more complex, and honestly, a whole lot more fascinating. And just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, every single one of the top 10 highest paid athletes this past year made over $100 million. Think about that. The price of admission to this very exclusive club has never been higher. Athlete money has just hit a totally different level. So to really understand how these fortunes are built, we have to split things into two big buckets. This is the key, the whole framework. There's the money they make for playing their sport, and then there's the money they make for for being famous. So on one side, you've got on-field earnings. Pretty straightforward, right? This is the salary, the prize money, the bonuses for winning games. And on the other side, you've got off-field earnings. This is the empire, the endorsements, the sponsorships, the businesses, all built around their personal brand. Okay, so first, let's dig into that on-field money. This is the stuff that makes the headlines, right? The massive contract numbers that we all hear about. But how do they actually get that money in their bank account? So yeah, on-field earnings are exactly what they sound like. It's the money they earn for being incredible at what they do. You can think of it like their core paycheck, the direct reward for being one of the best in the world at their game. You know, this kind of shatters a myth. A lot of people imagine athletes just get a giant, novelty-sized check for $50 million. But nope, for most of them, it works a lot like a regular job. They get direct deposits, on a schedule, during the season. The only real difference is, their pay stubs have a few more zeros than ours do. And of course, that base salary is just the starting line. These contracts are absolutely packed with incentives. An athlete might get a bonus for every game they play, a soccer striker can get extra cash for every goal, and yep, the whole team usually gets a huge payout if they win a championship. All these little clauses can add millions to their total. Alright, let's switch gears and look at the other side of the equation, because this is where a star athlete becomes a global business. We're talking about off-field earnings, where an athlete's name can become even more valuable than their skills. And here's the crucial thing to get. Off-field earnings aren't about what an athlete does, it's about who they are. Companies will pay millions just to have their brand associated with that athlete's image of success, of coolness. It's all about using that fame to build a personal brand that can sell anything. This didn't just happen overnight. The whole idea of the athlete endorsement has changed so much. I mean, it started with simple shoe deals, but then came Michael Jordan's deal with Nike back in '84. That didn't just sell a shoe, it created a whole new brand. Era Jordan. It changed the entire game, and it paved the way for the mega deals we see today. Which brings us to maybe the most exclusive club in all of sports marketing, the billion-dollar lifetime deal. Only 4 athletes in history have ever signed one. You've got Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Cristiano Ronaldo with Nike, and Lionel Messi with Adidas. These aren't just sponsorships, they are full-on, lifelong business partnerships. And this is just the perfect illustration of how powerful these deals are. Michael Jordan last played in the NBA in 2003, 2 decades ago, and yet he still makes over $130 million a year from Nike. His annual off-field earnings today are higher than what almost any active athlete makes in total. That right there is the power of a brand. So let's see how this all shakes out in the real world. How does this on-field versus off-field split actually look for some of today's biggest names? When you look at the data, you start to see some really different, really interesting stories. So let's go back to our number 1 guy, Cristiano Ronaldo. As you can see, his story is pretty clear. The huge majority of that $275 million is coming from his massive on-field salary with his Saudi club, a staggering $225 million. His off-field earnings are a mere $50 million. His income is all about that playing contract. Now, let's look at his longtime rival, Lionel Messi, and it's a completely different story. His on-field salary is $60 million, but look at his off-field earnings, $75 million. For Messi, his personal brand, his deals with companies like Adidas, they're actually bringing in more money now than his salary. And if you want the most dramatic example, just look at baseball's Shohei Ohtani. this is just wild. His on-field pay for 2025, about $2.5 million, but his off-field earnings, $100 million. Thanks to massive deals, Ohtani is a commercial giant whose business ventures absolutely dwarf his playing salary. He is the ultimate athlete as a brand. So, what does this all tell us when we zoom out and look at the bigger picture? Well, the trends show us a business that's growing like crazy, but also one that has some pretty significant imbalances. Check out this number, $53.6 million. That's what you had to earn just to crack the top 50 list of highest paid athletes in 2025. That is an all-time high, and it's almost double what it was just 8 years ago. The money at the very, very top is just exploding. But there's a really obvious omission from that top 50 list. For the second year in a row, not a single female athlete made the cut. Tennis star Coco Gauff, who's the world's highest paid female athlete, earned an estimated $34.4 million. I mean, that's a huge amount of money, but it's still almost $20 million short of making that top 50. So why the gap? Well, it really goes back to that first thing we talked about, on-field earnings. At the end of the day, players' salaries are tied to how much money their leagues make, mostly from those massive TV deals. And as long as men's leagues keep signing billion-dollar contracts, their salary pools are going to keep growing, which makes that gap really tough to close. So what's the big takeaway here? I think it's that the very definition of what makes a successful athlete has fundamentally changed. It's not just about what you do on the field anymore. To get to the very top, to make that elite money, building a global personal brand is every bit as important as winning. And that leaves us with one final thought, something to chew on. We cheer for the player, for the team, for those amazing moments. But in this new era, where an athlete's logo can be worth more than their last second goal, what are we really a fan of, the athlete or the empire? You know, we all see the headlines, right? The massive contracts, the highlight reels. But for some of the world's best athletes, the real high-stakes game doesn't even start until they leave the field. Today, we're going to dive into the absolutely wild, complex, and sometimes dangerous world of how they spend their millions. And this quote, it totally nails it. Once you've dominated your sport, a whole new game starts. And this one isn't just about winning trophies. It's about status. It's about showing the world that you've truly arrived. And for a lot of athletes, that means literally taking to the skies. Alright, so let's start at the very top, the absolute peak of athlete luxury. We're talking about the kinds of assets that shout, "I made it," louder than any championship ring ever could. Private jets and garages full of supercars. First up, a global icon, Cristiano Ronaldo. His schedule is relentless, so he needs more than just a plane. He needs a flying office, a mobile command center. And that's exactly what his Gulfstream G650 is. It's one of the best private jets on the planet, and it's a perfect symbol of his global brand, worth a staggering $75 million. And then, of course, there's Michael Jordan. His $70 million Gulfstream is basically a masterclass in branding. I mean, that custom wrap with the iconic elephant print, that's a direct nod to his most legendary Air Jordan sneakers. It's not just a jet, it's a flying billboard for his billion-dollar empire. And this kind of spending isn't just happening at 40,000 feet. Back on the ground, the numbers are just as mind-blowing. Ronaldo's car collection is worth over 18 million. But get this, Lionel Messi owns one single vintage Ferrari that's valued at 30 million. And you think one private jet is enough? Nope. Floyd Money Mayweather has two, one for him and a second one just for his security team. It's just a different level. So, what happens when a private jet and a garage full of supercars just isn't enough anymore? When you can buy pretty much anything you can think of, where does all that money go next? Well, this is where we move from the extravagant to the truly bizarre. Okay, so this is where things get weird. We're leaving the world of conventional luxury behind and entering a whole new territory of pure impulse and honestly, just wild personality. I mean, just listen to this stuff. A pet Bengal tiger, a personal ATM, in your kitchen, a $2 million private island. It keeps going. Permanent gold teeth, and yes, somebody actually built an underground bat cave, complete with a secret entrance and a moat. At this point, you're not just buying things, you're making a statement. So let's talk about Mike Tyson's tiger. You've probably heard about it, right? Well, that initial $70,000 price tag, that was just the tip of the iceberg. Then you have to add in the cost of a professional trainer, housing, and, oh yeah, the $250,000 legal settlement when the tiger, unsurprisingly, attacks someone. Suddenly that cool pet is a $500,000 liability. Or how about this one? Former NFL quarterback Vince Young. During his playing days, he was apparently dropping $5,000 a week at the Cheesecake Factory. But wait, it gets crazier. He once bought every single seat on a Southwest flight, all 120 of them, just so he could fly by himself. It's just a perfect example of a mindset where money feels like it's literally infinite. Look, these stories are kind of wild to talk about, but they point to something much, much darker. All of that incredible spending, well, it often comes with a devastating price tag. There's this famous stat from a Sports Illustrated report that found a shocking 78% of former NFL players are either bankrupt or under serious financial stress just 2 years after they retire. And if you want to understand how this can possibly happen, just listen to someone who's been there. Antoine Walker made over $112 million in his NBA career. He says it wasn't just about owning cars. He calls it a fetish, an obsession. And that obsession eventually led him straight to bankruptcy. This shows you that a lot of times, this isn't about logic. It's driven by emotion and impulse. So that really gets you thinking, right? This isn't just about being bad with money. There's a whole psychology behind this. Why are these flashy, physical things so tempting, even when they're a terrible financial decision? Well, there's this concept called the lure of the tangible. Think about it. Nobody can see your stock portfolio, right? It's invisible. But everyone sees your restaurant, your car wash, your brand new Rolls Royce. For an athlete whose whole identity is built on public performance, these visible, tangible things become a way to prove you're still successful long after the cheering stops. And this right here, this breaks down the central conflict perfectly. On one side, you have the athlete mentality, the absolute self-belief, the gut instincts, the feeling that you're the one in a million exception. It's what makes them champions. But in the world of finance, that exact same mentality can be your biggest weakness. They've beaten the odds their whole life, so they think they can beat them in business too. And that often ends in disaster. Okay, so this brings up a huge question. Imagine you suddenly have millions of dollars. Your old life is basically over. So who do you turn to? I mean, who do you actually truly trust with your entire future? Magic Johnson, who, turned his NBA career into a billion-dollar empire. He has this one simple rule. If your plan involves hiring your friends or your family to run things, he's out. He says it's just a recipe for failure, because being loyal to someone doesn't mean they know what they're doing. And this table just lays it all out, clear as day. You've got two paths. On one side, there's Magic Johnson. His strategy: partner with proven established experts and brands like Starbucks and Sony. On the other side, you have a cautionary tale like Rocket Ismail. He lost millions backing a bunch of super risky businesses run by his friends. We're talking everything from a knockoff Hard Rock cafe to calligraphy stores. The results, well, they speak for themselves. But here's the thing. Not all of this spending is for fun. It's not all about fast cars and risky business deals. In our last section, we're going to look at a side of athlete spending that most people never even think about. The enormous costs that are born out of necessity, not luxury. Take a look at this. For a top soccer player in England's Premier League, as much as 10% of their entire salary, we're talking over $1 million for some of these guys, goes straight to personal security. This isn't a flashy purchase, it's a non-negotiable cost of just being famous. And you might be asking, why is that even necessary? Well, it's because these athletes are basically perfect targets. Everyone knows they're rich, their schedules are public, and sometimes their own social media posts tell criminals exactly where they are and what they own. It makes them and their families incredibly vulnerable. And the stakes here are terrifyingly high. I mean, just think about the 2022 World Cup. England star Raheem Sterling's home was burglarized while he was away playing. The threat to his family was so serious that he had to leave the biggest tournament in the world to fly home and protect them. That's not just a financial loss, it's a personal crisis. So, at the end of the day, an athlete's fortune is way more complicated than just a big number on a contract, right? It's this mix of incredible spectacle, a very specific psychology of risk, and the very real dangers that come with being in the spotlight. Which really brings us to one final thought. Forget the supercars and private jets for a second. If your entire life changed overnight, if you were suddenly responsible for that kind of fortune, who would you put on your team? Who would you really, truly trust to protect it all? It's maybe the most important decision you could ever make.